I received a stimulus check from the government. What should I do with that money? Part 2. Hi, welcome to today's little lesson. Thank you so much for joining me. On our last little lesson, we began to address something that's on the minds of many Americans recently, and perhaps the citizens of other countries who have kind of followed suit with what's happening in the United States at this particular time in history. This is early May of 2020, and most American taxpayers are receiving a stimulus check in the mail, or by check or a direct deposit into their bank accounts. And my wife and I received $2,400, being a husband and wife without any dependent children. So if we had dependent children, we would have gotten $500 per child. Okay, and that's gone to everybody. Where'd that money came from? People say, well, the government sent it. Okay, that's true, the government sent it, but as we discussed in our last little lesson, the government doesn't have any money unless it taxes people. That's where the government, all governments, get all their money in taxes, you know. Now, some governments, like, for example, in China, they're getting income from businesses because the government owns so much of the business enterprises or joint ventures they have with citizens. But so it's a little different in those places. But nevertheless, in countries like the United States, governments get all their money from taxes. And so, you know, the money that we all just got had to come from taxpayers. And well, you say, well, I'm a taxpayer, so, you know, nothing wrong with that. Okay, that would be correct if it was that simple, but it's just not quite that simple. And we all know that on one level, the whole idea of a progressive tax structure contains a degree of, well, there's debate, I should say, on whether even that's fair. Okay, because in a progressive tax system, people who make less pay a smaller percentage of their income to the government in taxes, and people who make more pay a larger percentage of their income in taxes. And so those of us who aren't in the wealthy classes, we benefit a great deal from the taxes that are paid by the wealthier individuals. They're taking a greater share of the overall tax burden. In this country, our government's going to spend $4 trillion, at least. I think this year might be more like $6 trillion with the stimulus money that's all gone out there. So the taxpayers have to, you know, the government has to come up with the money by taxing taxpayers, and they actually don't get enough from the taxpayers. So the United States government borrows a huge percentage of their budget. I think last year, before this whole stimulus thing, the budget was $4 trillion, and something like $800 billion of that was borrowed money. And of course, who's on the hook for that? Well, taxpayers. If you're an American taxpayer, about 1/10 of what you pay in taxes goes just to pay the interest on the loans that the government has taken out to provide its services to you, okay? And you're benefiting, so, you know, you ought to be paying a portion of it. That's fair. All right, so what about these stimulus checks? Where'd that money come from? It came from the government, but it comes ultimately from your fellow citizens. And what's odd about it is it's not just the people who are living on your street or all who are alive right now. It's people who are babies right now, because this debt is so huge that our grandchildren will be the ones paying back the principal and the interest. So that brings kind of a moral question. You know, is it right to keep these stimulus checks when it's actually money that has been borrowed from our grandchildren? And I think most of us would agree that to take out a loan and you benefit from that loan, and buy a car, buy a boat, buy a house, whatever, and in the loan it says that your grandchildren are going to pay this back, you know, 20 years from now, or 30 or 40 years from now, that wouldn't be ethical. You know, but that's in essence what the government has just done on our behalf. So some of us have had a little trouble taking that stimulus money. Now, I totally get it in that people who have lost their jobs, people who don't have any savings, you know, those people are in a desperate situation. And for them, it's a little bit different. You know, they've got to feed their families and so forth. And so the stimulus check was a godsend to them. Folks like me who didn't really need it, it's a little different. So as I wrestle with it, and I'm not going to give you a pat answer on this, you know, so you're entitled to your opinion, and I'll respect you and hope you'll respect me for my opinion. But I didn't really feel right about keeping it. I actually have quite a few friends who are Amish. And as a rule, at least this is what they tell me, when they get their stimulus checks, they just throw them in the garbage can. And it's based upon their conviction that they should be taking care of their own and they don't need help from the government. They're not even considering the fact that the money's being borrowed from their children and their grandchildren, who will be the ones who have to pay it back. Just that, we're self-sufficient, we can, take care of our own, so we're not going to take money from the government. That's their conviction. And I actually, I can actually argue that there's some flaw in that, a little bit of flaw in that conviction. But regardless, what about for you? Well, I got money back from the government, and it was a direct deposit because that's how I have gotten tax refunds in the past. And again, there's nothing wrong with the tax refund. You're just paying your fair share of taxes, and if you've overpaid, they're giving you back what you overpaid. So that's your money. There's nothing wrong with taking a tax refund. And every year I get my tax refund by direct deposit. So they sent me my stimulus money by direct deposit. It wasn't in the form of a check that I could rip up. And I suppose I could investigate how to send a check to the government, send it back for $2,400, but I don't know how to do that. That's beyond my pay grade. Okay. Well, anyway, so I just decided I'm going to try to help people. This is a windfall for me I wasn't expecting. I know my grandkids are going to pay it back. I don't know what I can do about that because I have the money. I can't give it back. So I gave the money to charity. And I gave the money to my favorite charity, Heaven's Family, so that we could, because I know what we're doing, helping the least of these around the world. And you say, well, actually, you're giving money to yourself then, because you get paid by Heaven's Family. Actually, I don't. I have friends who personally support me, and so I don't have to, when people donate to Heaven's Family, to help the least of these, none of that money gets back to me in the form of my salary, because I have a personal support group that takes care of me, and that's a blessing. I'm so blessed. We're all so blessed in so many ways if we just start thinking about it. Okay, so I actually recommended to our constituents that if they didn't need their stimulus money and it wasn't in the form of a check that they could just tear up, and they could prayerfully consider donating it to charity. And of course, Heaven's Family is one of the many great charities that are out there, and do as the Lord leads. But I'm not, of course, setting any rules. I have no right to do that, right? Of course not. And I find no fault with anybody who needed their stimulus check and utilized it to take care of themselves and their families. And isn't it a blessing, that our government is concerned? It's a blessing. Both Democrats and Republicans are both concerned. And we all know that our system is imperfect, but let me tell you, it's a whole lot better than what, has existed in many countries around the world in the past and exist in many countries around the world today. Okay, so thank God for those blessings. Okay. Well, there's much more I could say on the subject, but I think I'll just stop there because pretty soon I'll be opening cans of worms. And it's hard to get those worms back in those cans. Oh boy. All right, check out heavensfamily.org. Thanks for joining me. God bless you.